the additions, the draft, free agency, a couple of other factors that go into where are the Chiefs right now versus where they were last year, a season of a bit of a disappointment, of a bit of subterfuge. We're going to get into it today with the man who knows all the answers a whole lot more than I do, Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. Let's get after it, folks. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Always a challenge with the intro. It's always fun. Welcome back, folks. This is Locked On, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free on every platform. Like, sub, hit the bell over on YouTube, because that's where you can see Matt Derrick telling me what the truth is and what my perception is and maybe is not. We're going to get into that today. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. You can find the Matrix on RogueAPC.com. You can find all my non-Chiefs football stuff on NFL33.com. You can find all the Chiefs information you need on ChiefsDigest.com, because that's where Matt runs his show. Matt Derrick, you are back, and it's the off season. Are we excited?
I'm pretty excited.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like there's never an off season for me, but
right.
This is the low point, right? This is the quiet before the storm. I mean,
right.
You are in a period of time where, other than guys retiring from training camp and figuring out, a couple of more contracts for some guys and everything, nothing's going to happen 4 or 5 weeks.
I call this dream theater right now, because it's all about possibilities, right?
This is speculation central.
Right. What could happen? Well, all kinds of things. But really, for me, it's about taking stock of where we've been for the last 10 and a half months from the last time we tried this. A lot has changed. Some things are the same, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes at the helm, Andy Reid coaching him up, Eric Bieniemy still looking for that head coaching job. But a lot of things are different as well. And let's start with Patrick Mahomes. Like, where do you gauge the offense and his development right now versus where we were 12 months ago when the offseason program had just concluded?
Yeah, and remember, last year at this time, Mahomes just got back onto the field during OTAs. He missed I think it was the first 3 practices of OTAs, and then he came in and started working his way back in, and he was pretty much full go by the mini camp and was a little bit ahead of schedule. But with that foot, he didn't have anything in April, as far as working with, even the existing players at the time. So really, I mean, at this point, he had 10 practices and OTAs in the mini camp under his belt with all the receivers, including even some of the new guys, which there weren't a lot last year, but I mean, it is what it is. This year, I mean, he's got an infinite amount more. I mean, we're talking about 4 weeks in Texas. We're talking about the entire OTA and minicamp period. I mean, that's a significant amount of work. So I would almost say that, at least from my impression, looking back to last year a little bit and everything, I think the offense, as far as preparation goes, as far as installation goes, as far as just getting everybody on the same page and being in the same spot, even though there was certainly with the pass catchers and the skill players a little bit more continuity last year, this year there's more continuity with the offensive line and some other pieces. I think overall the offense might be in a better place than it was 12 months ago. Even though, certainly there's some questions to ask about a couple of the places and the positions. But I think as far as, progress standpoint and where they're ready to go as far as, getting ready to play football and being ready for week 1, I think they're ahead of where they were last year at this time.
I think that really says it all between the quarterback and the offensive line. The two things that led to early season turnovers, Patrick getting hit early last season, like those are the two probably most problematic things. We could talk schemes and routes and how you attack defenses, but just block, take the snap, deliver the ball. It seems like that's the core fundamental that this team right now has an advantage over last season's squad.
Yeah, it really does. And, so even though this team is losing a little bit as far as the continuity, I mean, Hill, Robinson, Pringle, I mean, those were obviously 3 big pieces of the offense, and Tyreek Hill, an outsized portion of that. But I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks. I think there's more depth in that receiver room than there has been in recent years, to the point where not only think that they're better at, 4, 5, and 6, I think they're better at 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12. I mean, you go on down the list. I mean, I I think in the past, you've been able to look at this receiver group and say, okay, even going to training camp, maybe there's 7 or 8 guys that can make this team. And even then, the last, the 7th and 8th guys are only, fighting for maybe that 5th spot. I mean, in this camp, I think they're going to keep 6 receivers. And who could be those last 2 spots? It could really be almost 7 or 8 different receivers. That's just how deep this group is. And that's what's going to be sorted out. They got to sort out a few other things. Your receiver depth is going to get sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
Really, just deciding how many tight ends you're going to keep. The depth is pretty much sorted out there. Offensive line, you've got to maybe figure out who are going to be your last couple of linemen, but you know what you're going to have there. There's not going to be, other than at receiver, a ton of competition on the offensive side of the football once we get to training camp. There's going to be a few spots, but that receiver spot is going to be where it is at in training camp.
And I think that's probably going to be the most fun to watch just because of that fact as well. But I want to get to that, and I want to talk about the tight ends that you mentioned, because I was going there too, and we'll see what has to happen for this offense to be as strong as it can here on the backside of this when we tell you about our pals. Football season might be over, but totals, player performances, props, anything you can think of where you want to know what is the odds to lay, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting action. It doesn't necessarily have to be basketball either. It can be any kind of sports, hockey, boxing, UFC, pro soccer, anything out there that you want to put some action on, you can do it. BetOnline remains the best place for all of your sports scores and podcasts and news this season, next season, and every season. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action and get the news that you need to be smart about laying your odds at BetOnline, where the game starts. So it's funny you mentioned the tight end group, because I was thinking the same thing. It looks like it's set to me. Maybe I'm wrong, though, because I think my depth chart probably looks different than yours, because you're a lot more pragmatic than me. I'm looking for weaponry, and I'm looking for somebody to make plays, and Jody Fortson should be the 2. It's not a question to me, but I might be alone.
No, I don't think you're alone. Now,
Okay.
the question's going to be, when you're putting the personnel on the field, what are you looking for in that particular moment in time? And yeah, I could certainly make a case Jody Fortson could be the number 2. I still need to see a little bit more. I need to see what happens in pads. I need to see what happens at full speed. He's looked really good in OTAs, but we know Achilles injuries. It's not, guys don't always just come back 100%, and even 90% sometimes isn't enough. We need to see what really happens if he's still got the burst. He can still make some guys miss when it's a full go, because even OTAs are not 100% speed. It's a slower practice. So, that's what I need to see from Jody, but I think its potential is there. And certainly from an offensive standpoint, yeah, he's the guy that's got the best upside of the other, the backups that are there. I like his upside offensively better than Noah Gray at this point, even though Noah Gray was drafted to be an upside offensive guy.
Mm-hmm.
Blake Bell, you know what you're going to get. Blake Bell is Blake Bell, and he's got a place certainly in this league, and there's a spot for him. But if you're looking to get offense, if you're looking to move the football, Jody's probably your guy. Now, putting 2, 3, and 4, based on what I've seen at OTAs, I'd probably say, and what I'd put it at right now, I'd probably put Bell at 2, Fortson at 3, and Gray at 4. But it is super, super close, and it is definitely scheme related. That's the thing, is that if there's 2 tight ends on the field and you're going to have one doing some blocking, it's going to be Blake Bell all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have somebody coming in for Kelsey, which they should, might be Fortson. And you're going to see Jody Fortson on the field more. And to me, one of the questions going to be sorted out is just, where does Noah Gray fit in all this?
Well, if Noah starts taking snaps, then I think Blake's role is diminished to the point of non-essential. Can Noah Gray take a snap?
He has. He's taken them. He's been out there. It's just taking that next step, and that was the tough part for Noah Gray in year 1, was the transition when the pads came on. Noah Gray was everywhere early in camp, and then the pads came on and things got a little bit tougher. We need to see that growth. I mean, that's why to me, August is going to be the key month for Noah Gray, where he kind of fits into this rotation. But right now, for me, I'm with you. I mean, I'd like I'd like to see from an offensive upside standpoint, Fortson be the guy that gets that number 2 spot, but Andy Reid.
Yes. So you're telling me my guy Bushman is on the outside looking in?
I tell you what, Matt Bushman's had a really good camp, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt Bushman, BYU guy.
Yep, amazing.
That's gonna help. I mean,
it shouldn't, but it will.
as I had a former player for Andy Reid once say, when there's BYU guys in camp, a lot of times they're going to be on scholarship, so he might end up on the practice squad. But I tell you what, legitimately, Matt Bushman looked like he belonged. I mean, he had a really good camp. I mean, I thought all the tight ends had a pretty good camp. Mark Vidal had some drop issues at times, but still a project player. But I thought that entire group, for the most part, was pretty good.
I'm glad to hear that, because they, I think, are going to be the X factor. I think teams understand what they're going to get from MVS and from Juju and from Hardman. Maybe Sky Moore's a bit of a mystery, but like the top 3, they're at least known quantities because of their experience in the league and how they use them in combination, ask them to do things. I'm sure that's wrinkles defensive coordinators aren't too concerned about. It's about the X factor in Fortson and if Gray could contribute. And I think it's in the X factor about who can contribute in the run game as well. We talked about McKinnon signing last week. Like it does feel more and more that the 2 shoo-ins at this point are Clyde Edwards-Helaire and are Jerick McKinnon. And that's it. Everything else seems to be a toss-up to me at this point going into camp. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you are. I mean, and honestly, I mean, I think McKinnon is probably a little bit more of a toss-up to me. I mean, I think that it's, and I mean, Clyde's 100% on this team. Ronald Jones, I think, is 98% on this team. I mean, I'd have to I see something really remarkable happen to see a bunch of guys beat him out. But I think like there's just too much there for a little 1-2 combo that the Chiefs want to see. McKinnon, I mean, he's in that mix with everybody else. And I still, like I said, I see the benefit of McKinnon coming in being that not only is it just a depth piece alone, but he's a good leadership piece and a good work ethic piece for the younger guys, especially guys like Isaiah Pacheco and Jerrion Ealy, whom the Chiefs are really interested in, both those guys as far as rookies go. But the one thing that's great about the rookie position and running back in the NFL is that Ealy and Pacheco, 99% chance you can get them onto a practice squad, because that's just not the way the NFL works. I mean, it's not, other teams aren't going to see this and say, we got to get these guys off the waiver wire. I mean, running backs just aren't valued that way anymore. So, you can get those guys through. So yeah, does that make it easier maybe to keep a Jerick McKinnon, especially, if he has another good camp again? I mean, question's always going to be, when does age start to zap that speed a little bit? But you liked what you saw last year. It looked like it lasted deep into the season. You didn't see him wearing down. So yeah, I want to see more of McKinnon too. But then it factors in too. We're talking about keeping 4 tight ends. We're talking about keeping 6 receivers. Can you keep 4 running backs and a fullback? That's where the math starts to get problematic.
You must keep the fullback.
I should say Michael Burton's about a 99% lock too. I can't. Yeah. There's not too many multiverses where he doesn't make this team.
No. It's that one of the time stone. It's okay. The bigger question that looms that I think we're going to have to address over the next couple of weeks, probably multiple times, is what we're going to get into next about Orlando Brown after we tell you about our pals over here. Our friends at Built Bar are always coming out with great new flavors. Well, they've kind of outdone themselves this time. It is the new Mud Pie. And for the first time ever, they have regular Built Bars in Mud Pie, as well as the Mud Pie Puffs. You want to check those out. And they taste like what you want them to taste like. Whipped cream, chocolate mousse, smothered in 100% real chocolate, and topped with a cookies and cream crumble. You don't want to miss it. And it's still what the core of Built Bar is: 150 calories, 8 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. You want to get this. And all that real chocolate goes a long, long way. You're going to love the new Mud Pie or the Mud Pie Puff, whichever you prefer. You're going to dig them. All those ingredients, you can stop drooling and go get your nutrition and something that tastes great with our offer from Built.com. The code is LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off of your order at Built.com. So yes, normally you would think there's no storylines to be awaiting. As long as nobody gets arrested, we should have a nice calm June and early
Why did you
July,
say
right?
it out loud, right? Why did
Eh,
you say that
hey,
out loud?
we're looking for
I have
content. What are you going to do?
purposely avoided for the last week when anybody asked me, what could happen this off season. I have purposely avoided anybody having any legal entanglements. So if it happens, now it's your fault.
That's why you're credentialed and I'm not. Thank you, Chiefs
No,
PR.
it's just that I don't want to work. So I don't want to tempt fate.
There you go. But unusual to that circumstance is that we do have one thing that's like hanging. In years past, when Chris Jones was waiting to do his contract or whatever, or the Patrick year, it always felt like it was pretty inevitable that it was going to be about when rather than if. For the first time, when we have a contract issue that Orlando Brown still isn't under contract, and we know there's a negotiation going on, we know they have to get it done before July 15th. For the first time in a while, this feels still in the air kind of category for me. Do you see it as more concrete one way or the other right now?
No, I don't. I mean, with Orlando, I don't think anything is concrete. And part of it is certainly that you're right. I mean, the Chiefs haven't been quite in this situation before, or at least in recent years. Chris Jones was in this same kind of category. But with Chris, I mean, I think it's more of the fact that Chiefs fans knew Chris Jones, for a longer period of time. They knew what kind of a player that he was and the things that he said and what, was out there. There was never really, I mean, there was maybe a flicker of, okay, will Chris Jones show up for the beginning of training camp? But there was never really any consideration of, is Chris Jones going to hold out and miss games? That's not the Chris Jones that the fans knew. So, I think that's why everybody kind of felt comfortable thinking that was more of just a when, not if. I mean, it was going to get done, and it did. With Orlando, hey, it's a guy that fans only know for a year. The team only knows for a year. And in Orlando, I'll give it to you, is a different cat. I mean, he does think a little bit differently. His choice of agent, I think, shows that he's a bit of a different personality and he thinks differently. So I think that's what it's natural for people to, I think, have some, just questions and not be as certain about what the outcome will be. I still say, hey, the most likely scenario is that a long-term deal gets done and this is all water under the bridge. The next case scenario, I don't know if it's worst case or best case, but one scenario, and I think the second most likely scenario is that he plays under the franchise tag. I mean, the chances of, I think, Orlando Brown, holding out for a longer term amount and missing any time, I think is fairly remote. I think him getting traded is fairly remote. I mean, any other scenarios are all fairly remote, not impossible, but just unlikely unless something dramatic happens. But right now, and I would say the Chiefs fans, for the most part, no news is good news. I mean, if both sides are talking and nobody feels like they need to go out and negotiate through the media, you're probably in pretty good shape. But at the same time, deadline's July 15th. I'm not expecting any progress being made until close to July 15th. So if anything pops up on the radar, say before July 9th or 10th, I'll be very surprised. But after that, that's when you start watching.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. And I will be in the midst of moving locales. RGR Studios will be in flux. So we'll be doing this via phone or something. So I know that I will be calling you as soon as that happens. So we'll get that figured out. But coming down to the wire, that's what we should prep everyone for. That's standard operating procedure here, right? Deadlines make deals in this case, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and particularly this time of year, because nobody plans their offseason schedule around a player and their contract situation. They plan their schedule around their kids and the families and the team and everything. And this 3-week period, I mean, and really this period between really maybe the 4th of July weekend is the dead period in the NFL. Nothing happens. Why? Because no one's in the office. Everyone's, out on vacation. They're at home. They're on a beach. I mean, anywhere but in the office. So that's why, nothing usually happens this time of year. Now, once the people start kind of filtering back into the building after the holiday, that's when things happen. And that's one reason why that July 15th deal is there. I mean, that's pretty much the perfect time between when people start getting back to work and the beginning of training camp.
I think that's what we all kind of forget is like everybody has to get prepped to get their mind right for training camp. And it's not just the players. It's about the coaches. It's about the front office because there are a lot of things that are going to kind of hinge off of that Orlando Brown contract, and trying to make another acquisition of any kind for the defensive front is certainly going to be something that, if it isn't necessarily dependent, but is certainly facilitated by that Orlando Brown contract coming down, what we would anticipate is a lower base salary and a lower cap number. Do you think that that is in the cards? Your gut feeling now as we go into the lull, does that happen? Do they add on the defensive front, plus minus Orlando, whatever, or do they ride with the guys they have right now on the roster?
I mean, I do think that they add at some point. Now the question is going to be, where do you want to put those resources? Now, I get the sense certainly that when you're talking about the cap and the possibility of either spending that cap resource now on help, which if you're going to spend it, it's probably on the defensive line and at the edge rusher position. I mean, that's the one position that I think everybody agrees is where they could still need some help. I still get the sense that Brett Veach would like to use most of those resources he has this year, next year. I think he wants to be in a position to go get someone that can be an impact player in 23. That's whether it's a veteran, whether it's a free agent, whether it's a trade. I mean, if they put themselves, they're probably not going to be in the position to necessarily get another impact edge rusher. I mean, this was a very unique class where they were able to find one like Karlaftis at the end of the first round. You can't bank on that. I think that I get the sense that they want to be able to spend those resources next year, which to me would kind of preclude going out and, giving somebody $10 million this year. And the possibility of a trade at this point where you bring in, a fourth or a fifth year player or a third year player who's getting ready for, getting their deal and needs the new contract, that's tough to do this time of year. Mm-hmm. So those don't normally happen this time. I mean, if that gets done, it usually is in March and April. It's not in July. So that becomes less likely. I still think it's possible. I mean, and certainly what the Chiefs did last year, maybe they sit back and they ride it into the season and see where they're at. And if a veteran like a Melvin Ingram becomes available elsewhere, there's a lot of different ways to address this question. And some of them can be done now. Some of it can just be wait and see what happens down the road.
Well, I think the chime tells you that we are out of time for today, folks, because things happen. And we'll see if we get an inkling about the pass rush before then. But for now, thanks to you, Matt. Check out ChiefsDigest.com where you can get all of Matt's information. And, check out NFL33.com where you can get something non-Chiefs related just for the heck of it. It's always fun. But, Matt, thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ryan. Take care, everybody.
Folks, have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.